Um, I'm just going to go ahead and start. I'm Theodore Gifford. I'm going to be teaching beginner music theory, 2 p.m. every Tuesdays. There's not a specific age group for the class, so yeah, let's get started. Just really quickly, who I am. I'm a junior at Howard High School. I have played piano since first grade, viola since third grade, and I started composing somewhere in, sixth or seventh grade. I think the first piece I really completed was in seventh grade. And throughout my piano education, I've been taking music theory lessons just as a part of that. Uh, Also, I have, in terms of teaching experience and tutoring experience, I have three sisters, 14, 6, and 3. Me and my 14-year-old sister often end up teaching and caring for the 6 and 3-year-old sisters. So, I have a lot of experience with elementary school age children and how to explain things to them, etc. Like there's a lot of, it's very different when it comes to that, and say like the people that I tutor as a part of, well, with relation to like school and stuff. So the reason why I'm teaching music theory is that it's something that is so important to the way I view music, and especially in Howard County, is something that I feel like a lot of people gloss over. I feel like there's a lot of focus, and I guess I'm talking more in the classical music community here, but there's a lot of focus on performance and not as much focus on what makes music music. And that's something that I want to address, and I think starts at a very, and even something like the basic understanding that I would give lays a groundwork for a new type of learning and a new method of thinking that can be directly applied to performance, and also just towards future learning and fascination with music, which is like kind of a nerdy thing to say, I feel like, but it is something that is really important to me, that people understand, or that I help create this understanding for what makes music what it is. And I just realized I've been forgetting to flip through the slides, so this is where I am. Claude Debussy was a 19th century French impressionist composer, um, romantic. He wrote, I mean, his most famous things are Clair de Lune and his Arabesque on piano, which you might recognize, like the titles of those. And this is one of my favorite quotes about music theory, because it it addresses this discrepancy and like understanding that people have with music theory. I feel like people who know music but not music theory don't understand how music connects with music theory. Like they see it as a total abstraction and something that's been so changed from music that it doesn't actually apply to music. And then I feel like people who don't know music just don't see it as anything other than like something that's just wildly beyond comprehension, because I feel like it's just not something people are introduced to. And this quote kind of defines music theory as a way to interpret art in order to enhance art. And I think that's just something that's very important. So, why music theory? It doesn't seem to, you know, apply very directly even to music, but I'd like to argue the contrary because, okay, there's three reasons. So the first is that there's a sense of fulfillment that I think comes with music theory, or at least has come with learning music theory for me, because it allows you to be able to apply music in a way that you normally couldn't. Because if you're focused on performance, there's this constraint that you can only play things that are in front of you. And so if you want to go beyond that and just even in like a very like I guess like fun, just casual sense, like if you just want to like play around people or play with people or just like have fun with instrument, it's much easier if you can do something and play things that maybe you only hear by ear, or maybe things that, or just like join in with somebody or improvise, and all these things that really like allow you to express yourself, which I mean, I know it's a little bit of a, I'm not sure everybody just decides to take out instruments and play with other people, but it is something that you need music theory to do in order to have that kind of fun with music, instead of, or it expands the ways you can have fun with people. And then also for people who are like serious about music and going into and who are getting really good at performing, I think music theory is absolutely essential to being able to keep going. So it in the music field. So I think if your child is very serious about music, this class is something that is definitely essential. And then beyond that, I just think it's super fascinating and something that really just changes how you think about just how you learn and how you think about music. So now I'll do just a quick curriculum overview. The first weeks will be, and of course all of this is subject to change depending on the experience of the students coming into the program, and also and the age groups and the age range that I would be teaching. But I think as a basic outline, for the first 3 weeks, we'll go over basic notation, rhythm and key signatures and scales. Basic notation. Huh? Basic notation would be things like just staffs and notes, like what notes are where on the staff, reading, reading different types of scores, and all like dynamic markings, things like that, just things that you would need to have a basic understanding or like a groundwork for learning. And then we'll go over rhythm and how to take rhythm on the paper to what that sounds like. And then we'll go over key signatures and scales, and this is where we start to get into things that I would that are less notation, and now we're talking more music theory and talking about major and minor scales and the circle of fifths, things like that. And then for the next weeks, we'll get into more complicated things like intervals and chords, and starting to understand what makes chord progressions and songs, and where we really start to get at this question of what makes something music, like what makes it separate from just sound. And it also lays a groundwork for how we analyze music as a whole. So we'll start to get into more things like that. And then for the last few weeks, I'm thinking that we'll go into music history and sort of an exploration of music. So music history would just be things like, I mean, there's just been so many types of music over the years, so I'm not sure like how much I would be able to cover in just a week, but I think I would go over like the basic time periods, you have the Baroque, the classical, romantic, and contemporary period. And I would also talk about, and then in exploration of music, we would go over different, I mean, the goal would be to alter perceptions of how people view classical music and how people view and how students view music theory and how it applies to the rest of music. Because I feel like there's a general idea that music theory is only for classical music, but I would want to just kind of expand what people have experienced when it comes to music. Just quick lesson plans, like an overview of what the class would be like. I'll probably play at the piano, and I'll have a short presentation prepared for each lesson that would have just key concepts and key images that I would need for the lesson. But other than that, the class will be primarily taught through maybe some short demonstrations, because of course sound is a very important part of learning music theory, and then interactive activities that could include anything from just exercises between me and students to something more in depth, like having students create their own like ear training exercises was something I was thinking of, so it will be there will be as I have an aversion to teaching lecture style, of course, and then, of course that won't work for this kind of class. So, and then at the end of lessons, I will probably play some sort of recording that I think really either embodies what we learned in class or is just something that I feel like would expand how students see music, which is, of course, just a general theme throughout this. And then a review discussion just to make sure that concepts are as clear as possible. Just overview of objectives. I've kind of just woven these into the whole presentation, but these are kind of the things I want students to get out of this, because there's no way that in 7 1-hour classes that I would be able to completely teach any student and get them to the point that I'm at after what is this, almost 10 years of learning music theory. But rather what I would want is to create just a baseline for and incentivize kids to continue to take music theory and understand why it's so important and intrinsic to music. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. If there's any questions, That's my email. And also, I guess you could ask, I don't know, well, we don't really have that much time, so I think we should go on to the next person.